Hi everyone, and welcome to the Awakening Show. We are honored to have Silvana on the show. She is a feminine empowerment coach, and I'm just so excited to ask so many questions. Silvana, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So my first question to you would be your journey. What does your journey look like from birth to now?
Oh God, do we have enough time? So, I grew up in Colombia, and I grew up in a family that was all women. I was surrounded by women growing up, and there was a lot of, I said trauma that we all have carried and passed to one another. So the beginning of my life kind of set up the stage for everything I have been doing up until this point, because as you know, most of us have spent our whole lives just trying to heal from our childhood. So during my teenage years, I started getting very heavy-hearted and had a lot of anger towards life, towards, God, creation, everything. I left my house very young, and I was just trying to fit into the mold that was placed for me, of like, this is what your life should be like, so go after that and then you'll be happy. And I got to do everything that, my family wanted me to do, and then I hit rock bottom. I was like, okay, everything's accomplished, and I just had this death wish of just like not being able to go on anymore. And that's when I'll say it was a conjunction between life giving me what I needed, the catalyst to begin looking for seeking, and me just being absolutely just not being able to take it anymore. So, I started just trying to exploring different things that were not, that were very different from what I grew up. I grew up Catholic, and I was like, okay, let me look at tarot cards and crystals, and what is this chakra thing, and kind of began opening that door. And very quickly, I got taken into this journey where I moved a lot, trying to find home, right? And not knowing that eventually home is a place within. So I ended up finding plant medicine and sitting in ceremonies with some shamans. And that is what started this very intense healing process. That it wasn't only about my life, it was about my family's life, our ancestral line, and those traumas that keep repeating generation after generation. It hasn't been easy, it has been very intense and dark, but what I've learned is that in the other side of that darkness and that heaviness, what you find is power. And right now, collectively in humanity, I feel like we're going through a rebalancing phase where we have this distortion of the play and the interaction between masculine and feminine energy, and we're on the other side of masculine energy, where the masculine in all of us, it's also exhausted. You cannot. It's like, okay, things are not working. We've been doing this in this model for thousands of years. What's the missing ingredient? Why do we have so many conflicts and war and slavery, poverty, all of these things? So I think that part of my personal journey, it's very aligned with the collective of, it's that feminine essence that we have shut down in all of ourselves. And that's where life took me through my journeys, to find that feminine power that lives in all of us, and try to empower that part that is creative and soft and abundant and beautiful.
I love that. That is a beautiful way to perceive your wonderful journey, and for you to be able to come through and to now coach people on this, especially with the background that you've had, is phenomenal. How many clients have you had?
I've had about maybe from 30 to 40 clients. Some of them come and we just work for a month, and there's some that we've been working for a very long time together. It depends on where they're at in their journey and what they need from me, because it's an energetic exchange, right? It's like I happen to just say the thing they need to keep going or redirect their energy to go into their own personal healing journey.
That's awesome. So with your clients, how does it work? They find you online, and they make an appointment with you, and I'm sure during these times it's more of a Zoom call.
Yes.
Right. And so do you just start off with past traumas? Is that how you work through, or just their journey?
Well, I used to have a structure where I'm like, let's cover this, let's cover that. And what I found is that whenever I just open up the space and I tell people, in this hour that we're going to be talking together, whatever comes, let it come. Be as petty as you need to be. You're not trying to impress anyone here. I want you to know that I want to meet you wherever you're at, your humanity, the part of you that is wounded. And that just creates that space where things that can be shameful or perceived as dark or bad, right? Because humans, we love to label everything. They guide their own journey. Whatever comes up is like, okay, I'll meet you right here, and then let me provide another perspective to help you look at things from a higher point of view instead of the point of view of the person or the victim or the person that experienced the trauma. And just go a little bit higher, step by step, right? I cannot tell somebody that experienced sexual abuse as a child, well, it's not real, you know? Like, trauma is not really real. We transcend it because they're gonna get triggered, and it's not helpful. So the way I work is I begin by working through little lies that are closer to the absolute truth. And the absolute truth is that we are one. There's nothing to heal. There's just perceptions to fix. But we cannot get there from the victim to that place in one session. So it's just a process, and I guess the person I speak with, they will let me know where they're at, and then I meet them right there.
That's awesome. That is so cool. Do you see any patterns with certain people, men, women? Are there any, or is it just completely everyone is totally different?
Definitely patterns.
Really?
Yes. I feel like most of my clients, except a few, most of my clients are women, and I work with men as well, but it's about their feminine energy. And I feel men have a little bit more resistance to dive into feminine healing because it feels like, no, I'm just going to go divine masculine healing, right? And so most of my clients are women, and what I've noticed is this inability to accept ourselves as we are, especially in the shadow parts of ourselves, right? The things that society and life and humanity considers to be bad, inappropriate, or unacceptable. Every culture has their own perceptions of what being a woman is, of what feminine energy is, and we'll try to fit into that mold. So whenever we have collective ancestral trauma that we've been carrying generations back, it's not very easy to become aware of them. And for the most part, I find the lack of acceptance, a lot of control, wanting to control yourself, the process, and others around you, and just a lot of unworthiness.
Yeah, I can honestly see those patterns in people that I know, myself, I mean, in general, too. Mm-hmm. So when you're working on those, I bet it becomes almost maybe even easier and easier as you get to know so many different people and those triggers that they've gone through or have or will have even. You could probably predict what will come next if they don't, push through or transcend, if you will.
Exactly, yeah, because we have all these programs, the religious programs, the gender programs, cultural programs, and they're just running behind the scenes without our awareness of it. So it's very difficult to see what you are unable to see. And I feel that whenever we work with somebody for coaching or spiritual healing or anything, all they're doing is just giving a mirror from a little bit of a slider, what's the word? From
different perspective.
Yeah, different perspective from a little bit of a tilted mirror. Just to see a little bit deeper and then see if the person, right, the individual is able to accept that and see that.
Yeah, I think like any trauma that people have, they come up with a narrative right then a different narrative the next day, then a narrative a month later, and sometimes it gets like less, but sometimes the trauma gets like more and it like it's deeper, it becomes deeper and deeper as they have negative thoughts about it or they're sad about it and it just, they can't stop thinking about it. And it's just so sad to see that. It's so sad. I'm so glad you're working on that. Like, oh my gosh, I think everybody needs to sign up with you, seriously. So as far as Colorado, how do you like being here? And do you feel like your business is growing in the U.S. Due to plant medicine? Are you having some of your clients also doing plant medicine?
Yeah, so I don't facilitate the ceremonies. I work with a shaman that does, and I assist them. So there are some people that I don't ever say to somebody, you should do plant medicine, because that is an extremely personal choice. But if I have a client that's like, okay, I'm ready for the next step, I'm willing to try this, I'm able to either arrange something here, or before COVID, obviously recommend them to a few places in South America that I know and trust. And here, my clients are from all over the world. I just happen to, I've moved about 12, 13 times in the last 10 years.
Wow.
And I was like, why do I keep doing this? Am I running from something, or am I looking something? And something that came very clear this summer for me is that different places have different energies. And I have been in a journey where I keep unearthing and finding new belief systems that are not helpful anymore. Maybe they were before, but not anymore. And the energy of certain places just helped me ground myself in a different way, so I can begin working through those things. So I believe that I've always felt that impulse of, I wake up one day, I'm like, oh my God, I need to move now. And then within a few months, life makes it happen very easily. And right now, I've been in Colorado for almost 2 years. I'm feeling the itch again.
Okay, I was just in Sedona. How about Sedona? I loved it there. The energy is phenomenal.
Yeah, Sedona is beautiful. I wouldn't live in Sedona. I've tried.
Oh, you have?
Yes, and because I lived in Tucson, I lived in Phoenix, so I used to go to Sedona very often. And for me, Sedona is one of those places that you go in, you recharge on ground, shift things, and then you get out to integrate. The people that live in Sedona, I've noticed about them, they are very, very in tune with the energies of that land, and they're just flow and morph to whatever that's there. I feel like I have more resistance. So I go there, I get like shaken up, and then I go elsewhere to go integrate the healing that happened.
That's exciting. Well, we're happy you're here for now.
Yes,
You'll
me
have to
too.
keep us posted on where
We'll
you're
see.
next.
We'll see where life takes me next.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's exciting, and I feel that I'm also stepping more into my own confidence as a coach. I've had, and it's been hard to find the appropriate label, right? Because I was like, okay, shadow work is what I do, and then it's like, well, that's just a piece of the puzzle. Like I told you earlier, it's just it's one part of the whole picture. So it's I don't necessarily like to put a label into my work, but I have to, because it's needed. I need to also ground things a little bit. And right now, this is what I see and what I sense is this massive awakening of this energy of like, okay, we all have to heal. I mean, the entire planet is healing. There hasn't been one person I've met this summer that has not been affected by the world situation. And that just reminds us that we are one. And until every single human being is free of their misperceptions and free of their traumas and our collective traumas, then the work is not done. And we just should have fun with it and be open to it.
And talk through it and work through
Yes.
it. I think, just meeting people who don't know that there are people like you out there. So getting this message out there and letting people know. I think it, like you said, it will then, spiral into a bigger awakening with people like yourself. So
Yeah. And in my healing, in my personal healing journey too, what I've noticed is that I heal the most whenever I'm met by someone that's like, I can look at all your crap and be okay with it. I'm not gonna judge, right? Because we have all these fears of, oh, this is too shameful, this is too dark about me. And the more we perpetuate that, we're just prolonging the process. And it's just a matter of unearthing, finding things, and then speaking them out in a safe environment, in a safe space that allows us to dive deep into the shame and guilt and anger that has been repressed for, in our personal life for as long as you've been alive, and collectively thousands of years.
Yeah, and that's like at the essence and or definition of shadow work, I think, is what you just said.
Exactly. It's just giving the darkness an opportunity to come out and very shyly say, like, this is me, right? And the thing about it is that we live in, our human brain lives in the world of duality. We know we are one, right? You and I are just two little drops of the same ocean, yet you are Kim and I'm Silvana, and they're both true. So shadow work is about helping the human side of us see what is hidden and accept it. Because overall, darkness and light, they both exist for a reason. Darkness is an illusion that the higher consciousness created to allow us to understand the light. Yet, whenever we are here in these physical bodies, that darkness feels very real. And I don't like to bypass the human suffering. It's an illusion, but guess what? That illusion hurts and it feels real. And the person experiences as real. And shadow work is about me saying like, that pain, that darkness, that wound, it's welcome here. All of you is welcome here.
I love that. I love that so much because nobody in my life has ever said that. I love that because we don't get to talk about that. It's like we have to put on a show, especially women. We always have to be happy and healthy and everything's okay. And
be kind
yes,
all the time and smile. Yes, I accept everything. No anger.
Yes, exactly. And to be able to give yourself a moment, and men or women, and actually go through that and speak about it and release it and unearth it, because sometimes there's things we don't even remember. They're so packed down there. But
we lie to ourselves too.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we have all these stories. We experience a trauma and then we make a story around it to either protect it or just hang on to the hurt. And it gets very confusing. And one of my friends, she's a psychotherapist, and we were discussing the other day how we can tell ourselves lies that we believe. And I've done that too. When I was in college, I was sexually abused by a friend. And when I went to the hospital afterwards, I was very shamed by the doctors because I had been drinking. They're like, oh, you put yourself in that situation. And when that happened, I just started kind of gaslighting myself, like, well, they're probably right. It wasn't abuse. No, it's fine. And then the story developed right into, oh, I actually stopped it from happening. And if you would have put a lie detector test on me to ask me, like, did that happen? I'm like, no, absolutely not.
Isn't that crazy?
And then I was in an ayahuasca ceremony where all of a sudden I saw the truth, and I'm like, how could I have lied to myself? Like, that's how deeply shameful, trauma can be. And our brains and our egos, all they're trying to do is protect us from experiencing something that might feel as death. So I think that, having compassion for those side of ourselves that experience the trauma and doesn't have the wisdom to understand it and process it right away, is how we heal ourselves. Self-compassion, self-forgiveness, giving ourselves room to be in our light and also in our shadow, especially in our shadow.
So what would you give our audience as far as an additional guidance, because that was beautiful, to maybe unearth this and then kind of self-heal? How does one unearth it? Would they be journaling? I mean, would they, think about the trauma and remember it one day and then remember it another day and then like a week later remember it and see how it changed a little bit? Or what are your thoughts on how we can process this?
Well, the beautiful thing about this type of work is that the mind doesn't need to be involved. Mm-hmm. We don't have to remember in order to heal, because life, time is an illusion. So past, present, and future are all happening in the now, yet we have the perception that it moves in a linear way. Healing, because healing happens on an energetic soul level, healing happens instantaneously. What takes time is for the mind to accept the process and be able to begin kind of settling into the new perspective. So the best teacher and the best healer is life itself. And we are going through a time that is so powerful right now because life changed, right? We were quarantined all over the globe, and then now a lot of people are having to work from home, and people lost their jobs, lost their relationships. Like, there's so many changes happening collectively that there's no need for us to go dig into the past. If you can just be present with the discomfort that all the changes bring, and present with the feelings of grief, of despair, of anger, allow yourself to feel them and just say, like, it's okay, all of you is welcome here. Feelings, all of you is welcome here. then that process begins happening naturally. We know how to heal ourselves. It's not something that the mind has to figure out. It's something that life has its wisdom, and life propels us towards evolution. And evolving is healing. Evolving is being able to understand ourselves deeply. And even though we have an entire world to understand, the only universe you need to understand is the inner universe, because then things begin reflecting. So using life, using the people around you, using your job or lack of job, using your relationships and experiences and fights and road rage as opportunities and catalysts towards healing is how we begin doing that. It's not about like, oh, I'm feeling terrible, let me make myself happy right now by putting singing bowls or meditating right now. Of course, meditation does help greatly into going back into that presence, but those negative feelings, they need space to be present, and that's how we're able to transmute them.
That's really, really powerful, because again, we are not led to believe that we should go through those emotions, or that we should allow them to be, even if it's just for a moment or 2 minutes, or who knows. But yeah, I appreciate that. I do. It is powerful. We need to understand that, and to kind of like restate it within ourselves, like, it is okay. It's okay that I feel this right now.
Exactly. And whenever I work with clients that experience very severe abuse, it is very easy to get lost in the process of, especially when you're doing the shadow work. So a practical tool that I have and I recommend to those clients is to create a container. So during days where all the negative emotions are coming to the surface and it gets overwhelming, because we also have to live life, right? We have responsibilities, and that's just part of it. What I do is that, you can talk to those feelings and say like, okay, right now I need to go back to work, but I promise you tonight I'm going to sit with you. And it does seem like a very odd thing to say to yourself, because you're not talking to yourself, you're talking to those emotions, to the wounded inner child. So say like, sweetie, I feel you, I hear you, not right now, tonight, right? And then you honor that commitment to yourself. And right before bed, I like doing shadow work at night, because the energy of the moon helps put things to the surface. During that time, you can put a timer of 3 hours where you allow the unworthiness, the anger, the pain, the feelings of nothingness or death to be present, to take over, to just go over and be. But then you have a timer. Said, okay, from 8 to 10. And at 10 p.m., I'm going to breathe. I'm going to come back to my body. I'm going to be present. I'm going to tell myself it's okay. This was the space I created for you to go crazy and let all the darkness out. And then now that it's 10, I return to my body, and then we go to sleep.
Yes.
And in sleep, I believe that sleep is one of the best healers, because our subconscious is kind of pushing and rearranging the energy that we just move by giving permission to that darkness to be and be wild. And that can look like crying in the bathtub for 2 hours, or that can look into like screaming into a pillow and just creating the physical safe space where you can do that, where you want to be interrupted, and where your inner child, your wounds and your wounded inner child have the opportunity to just be heard.
Yes, I've never heard of that, creating that time frame for yourself. Because sometimes when we've had a bad day, or you heard bad news, or there's a pandemic, you want to go home and you want to like be by yourself for a moment and go through those emotions. But there's something on TV and you watch it, and those emotions are just lost, or you'll revisit them one day, someday, or they'll pile up. But to carve out space is such a smart idea.
Yeah,
I love that.
And also giving yourself the flexibility of, if you're not ready to deal with something, go watch Netflix for 3 days, and just chill and relax and bypass as much as you want. Like, give yourself permission also to avoid doing the work, because it can be too much sometimes, but just be aware of it. So like, I'm, and I've gone through periods of my life where it's so heavy that I'm like, I am going to turn on my TV and go zone out for the rest of the day, because I can't do that right now. It's just softening with ourselves, like not trying to be this or be that, or now everybody's like, oh, I'm seeking enlightenment, I'm going there. I'm like, yes and no, right? Like that's valid, but then also being with whatever it is that is coming in the moment, it's important. So even if that means avoiding.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love it. I love it. So as far as your next steps with this new branding model that you have, what would you like to tell the audience about you piecing more pieces of the puzzle together as a whole healer, whole meaning like a full healer?
Well, I'm trying to set up a little bit of framework to do this, because the beautiful thing about feminine energy is that it just knows where to flow. It just happens naturally. But especially for women, because that's where my heart and work always, I have a soft spot for the feminine spirit. We need to have some sort of healthy masculine in our lives, and discipline, structure, organization helps us with that. So we create the vessel, and then the feminine energy fulfills it. So I am currently working on creating a course that will create those little containers and prompts for you yourself to do the magic, right? To let your own feminine energy guide you into what's next for you, but in a more organized way, right? Because even my sessions, we just go with the flow every time, and that's healing and powerful. But if we are to do this together and replicate the process and just be like, all right, let's create space for the feminine to be, I think having some sort of framework and structure is important. So that's my next project.
Yay!
Yeah,
That's exciting. So the courses sound awesome. I'd love to take one. What would you like to tell the audience, just in general, about possibly healing or the next steps in healing with this COVID, a pandemic, to help them get through this? You know, I think we were up here, now we're kind of coming back down. There might be another couple of waves here and there, but how do you suggest that we like pull through and be our best selves through this?
I think that we need to begin letting go of the idea that there is something to do, right? Because we're always doing and seeking and chasing. You know, even with spiritual work, like I was always like, next ceremony, next ceremony, next ceremony, and that's still my mind running from that present moment. Collectively, I think we're all experiencing uncertainty, fear. Old traumas are coming back. All of our old demons are revisiting us, and the best advice for me is to be there with that and allow yourself to cry, allow yourself to get unruly, give yourself permission to just throw a temper tantrum, because ultimately the part of us that needs healing is the inner child that did not get its needs met. So looking at our wounds and our emotions as little kids that just need to cry out and scream, and you have a baby, so you know whenever they need to express that, they're just gonna do it. So yes. Treat yourself like a child. Treat yourself like a little boy or a little girl that's in the corner and it's scared and is just wanting to cry and shaking, and go mother that part of you by saying like, you can't be like this, you can be in a tantrum, you can be angry, you can be hurt and in pain, and I got you.
Wow, my gosh, that is so amazing. I love that. That's phenomenal. Silvana, where can the audience find you?
So my website is silvanaisasa.com, and I'm also on Instagram. My Instagram is silvana.isasa.
Perfect. Well, the table is open if you want to say anything else to the wonderful clientele. The floor is yours.
I would like to share my mantra this summer, which is all of you is welcome here, especially during those times. If we begin welcoming all parts of ourselves, the healing happens naturally.